Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sharing time with the member from Victoria. It is with a heavy heart that I speak to the House today. In what is becoming a far too often used phrase over the last 2 years, we find ourselves in yet another unprecedented situation. How did we get to this point where the Emergencies Act need to be used? The fact that we are here debating this is indicative of the fact that all levels of governments have failed to uphold even the most basic laws. As we know, law enforcement has been paralyzed for weeks. Until Friday, the police response in Ottawa has been to avoid towing or even ticketing vehicles out of, quote, fear of confrontation. Indigenous, Black, and other people of color from coast to coast to coast looked at this situation and rightfully asked how heavy-handed those same police forces would have cracked down on them if they attempted a fraction of what they are witnessing. Videos of police forces violently engaging with tent cities in parks for the homeless are circulating, reminding us of how hard police forces criminalize poverty. It is clear that we are now long past due to seriously examine the state and culture of policing in this country. But it extends beyond that. We saw the city of Ottawa change their electronic signs on the highway to properly guide the way for occupiers to reach their destination. The Prime Minister adopted a do-nothing approach and was quick to hide behind jurisdiction when it suits him. Yet it is impossible to deny that the Liberals used vaccination as a wedge issue in the election, throwing aside real leadership for partisan gain in the hopes of recapturing a majority. Meanwhile, Conservative MPs shook hands, vocally supported, and even did interviews in front of Canadian flags defaced with swastikas. In support of the occupiers, the Conservative members for Ranfield, Nipissing, Pembroke even referenced, quote, global jet-setting resetters, a clear dog whistle for conspiracy theorists who believe the World Economic Forum is forcing some sort of great reset on society. The interim leader of the Conservatives, while she blames the Liberals for creating division, in her emails, noting her party's support for the occupation, said, and I quote, I understand the mood may shift soon. We need to turn this into the Prime Minister's problem. The only declared candidate for leader of the Conservatives, the member for Carleton, has been cheering the occupiers on from the start. And yet here they are in this place, refusing to acknowledge the role they have played throughout this pandemic, nurturing the ecosystem of anti-vaxxers and conspiracy, blaming everyone else for creating division. In location across the country, most significantly the downtown core of Ottawa, we've witnessed over the past 3 weeks an illegal occupation. Lives have been utterly upended. This illegal occupation shut down business operations. In Ottawa's downtown core for weeks, people are too intimidated to leave their homes. Threats and harassments are made. Some of this abuse has been hurled at healthcare workers, school children on school property. Retail workers have been assaulted. A building had an attempted arson where the doors were taped shut. Another building had occupiers attempting to handcuff the doors closed. Measurements of sounds have found unsafe levels of prolonged exposure to decibels for residents that could cause permanent hearing loss. Measurements of pollution have shown that idling trucks in the core for this long have had a significant impact on air quality, not to mention the impact of climate change. Large amounts of firearms have been confiscated at Coots, yet the main organizers of this illegal occupation, with a long history of posting white supremacy rants about, quote, Anglo-Saxon replacement theory, like to call it a peaceful protest. Let's be clear, hurling racist insults, harassing outreach workers to take food meant for the homeless, entering businesses and refusing to follow public health guidelines, and intimidating workers, banishing symbols of hate like the Confederate flags and swastikas, yelling at school children, assaulting journalists, deputizing themselves with unlawful authority to detain people, using international money or cryptocurrency to help fund this illegal occupation, issuing a pseudo-legal document to overthrow a democratically elected government and to install in a governing coalition with this group, with the Governor General and Senate, is not peaceful protest. Occupiers who, while they complain about their freedoms being infringed on, sat in makeshift hot tubs on Wellington Street, while their children they've brought to the illegal occupation played in a bouncy castle with constant loud horns blaring that could cause damage to your hearing, and the irony somehow is entirely lost. And for our conservative friends, whether it's the existence of systemic discrimination, a woman's right to choose gay marriage, trans rights, or a number of other issues that pertain to the freedoms and rights of people in this country, conservatives are more than willing to ignore charter rights when it doesn't align with their views of their base. But the Liberals aren't much better. Remember in 2015 and the last election under first past the post? Well, that got scrapped when the identified proportional representation system didn't align with what the Prime Minister wanted. And what about the freedom of assembly? They're no better than the Conservatives tripping over themselves to trample on the rights of workers with back to work legislation. The Conservatives want to claim that they are there for workers, that though there have been more than 4,800 complaints regarding unpaid wages filed by long-haul truckers to the Employment and Social Development Canada in the last 3 years alone. Yet the Conservatives have been completely silent on this injustice. Not only that, why are they not advocating for workers at Rideau Mall? The location of over 1,000 workers have been closed for weeks as a result of this illegal occupation. Retail workers in downtown Ottawa at this point have a $0 paycheck. We are in an unprecedented situation where the Conservatives have essentially cheered on this illegal occupation while the Liberals sat on their hands, allowing things to escalate unchecked. It should never have had come to this. We need a series of thorough examinations on how every level of government let things get to this state. Make no mistake, the NDP is taking the use of the Emergencies Act very seriously. We won't give a blank check to the Liberals. The government will have to stay within the established powers and ensure those extraordinary powers are not abused, or we will withdraw our support. Thus far, police forces have shown great restraint and care as they retake our streets. It is heartening to witness. I sincerely hope that this approach, especially to actually peaceful demonstrations, whether it's Indigenous peoples or racialized peoples, becomes the norm, not the exception. Mr. Speaker, we need this occupation to end. We're all tired of the impact of the pandemic. We want to return to some form of normalcy. We want to see a path going forward so Canadians can know we want to see a plan going forward so Canadians can know what they can expect. The NDP has called for this when our leader called for an emergency debate back on February 7th. All Canadians deserve to be safe and free of harassment. The residents of downtown Ottawa needed us to act to ensure their safety and freedoms are protected. Mr. Speaker, let's stop the partisanship, let's get to work, and let's bring back safety for all Canadians. And equally important, after all of this, let's look deeply into the situation so that we can prevent this from ever happening again, Mr. Speaker. And I thank you for the time for allowing me to raise my voice today.